I promised in my recent live streams that if I get 100 YouTube members, I will make 10 videos. Each of those videos will discuss a chapter of the Quran, so 10 videos for 10 chapters of the Quran each. And this is the first installation in this series. Unlike Allah and His Prophet, I prefer to be a man of my word. And what better place to begin than the very beginning, the first chapter of the final revelation of Almighty Allah. This chapter is called Surah al-Fatiha, which translates as the opening. And that's an interesting title, especially when you learn that that's probably not the first revelation Muhammad received from the angel Gabriel. Granted, a few scholars have claimed that this surah is actually the first revelation Muhammad received. A good example is al-Wahidi from the 11th century. In his Asbab al-Nuzul, he related this Islamic tradition. The messenger of Allah, whenever he went out, used to hear someone call him, "O Muhammad," and whenever he had this, he used to flee. Warakat ibn Nafal advised the Prophet to remain in his place when the caller calls him so that he hears what he has to tell him. And so when he went out, he had the calling, "O Muhammad." He said, "Here I am at your service." The caller said, "Say, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah." Then he said, "Say, praise be Allah, the Lord of the world, the beneficent, the merciful, owner of the day of judgment." And he read until the end of the opening of the book. So essentially, al-Wahidi is claiming here that the first time Muhammad started hearing voices, they told him to recite the Shahada and Surah al-Fatiha. They also claimed that those were the opinion of Ali ibn Abi Talib. That's the son-in-law and cousin of Muhammad, who Shias hold as the rightful successor of the Prophet. However, for most Muslims, Surah al-Fatiha is not the first revelation Muhammad received. That's the status reserved for Surah 96, or at least the beginning of Surah 96. So why is Surah al-Fatiha the first surah in the Quran if that's the case? And why is it called the opening? Well, one possible explanation is that the wise compilers of the Quran considered it an expression of foolishness to arrange the surahs in the order they were believed to have been received. Chronological arrangement will require the use of logic and common sense, and those are haram, obviously. Author Jeffrey, a scholar of Islamic studies at the University of Columbia, gives another explanation. In Origins of Quran, edited by Ibn Warraq, Jeffrey posited that Surah al-Fatiha is not a part of the Quran. He states, Surah 1 of the Quran bears on its face evidence that it was not originally part of the text, but was a prayer composed to be placed at the head of the assembled volume to be recited before reading the book, a custom not unfamiliar to us from other sacred books of the Near East. It is possible, of course, that as a prayer it was constructed by the Prophet himself, but its use and its position in our present Quran are due to the compilers who placed it there perhaps on the flyleaf of the Standard Codex. Later he states that Fakhr ad-Din Arazi quoted Abu Bakr al-Assam as saying that he considered al-Fatiha not part of the Quran, and apparently the oldest commentaries began with Surah al-Baqarah, the second surah in the Quran. It is also well known that Fatiha was not included in the Codex of Ibn Masud. What this tells us is that the early history of the Quran includes versions without al-Fatiha, and back then it wasn't considered part of the Quran but as a prayer to be recited before reading the Quran. Despite some Muslims claiming that there's only one Quran perfectly preserved letter to letter without a single variation, they may find out on the last day that the Quran in heaven doesn't have Surah al-Fatiha. By the nature of the Quran, the speaker is always Allah, and that's why the Quran is the perfect speech of Allah. But Surah al-Fatiha reads as a prayer made to Allah. So is Allah talking or praying to himself? And that leads us to the third explanation, and this one has to do with the name al-Fatiha. It may not necessarily mean the opening of the Quran, but the opening surah recitation of each rakat of Salah. It is recited 17 times by every good Muslim in their obligatory 5 daily prayers. According to Ubay ibn Ka'b, the messenger of Allah said, Allah the mighty and sublime did not reveal in the Torah or the Injil anything like al-Quran, al-Fatiha, which is the 7th oft recited. And Allah said, it is divided between myself and my slave who have what they ask for. I love how Allah calls Muslims his slaves. That's so empowering, dignifying, and liberating. I am sure that the recipe for a free society would definitely be a body of laws dictated by someone who sees you as his slave. But that's by the way. The gist of this hadith is that there is nothing like Surah al-Fatiha, and those who recite it get whatever they request from Allah. It is a special verse that can perform signs and wonders. In Sunan Abu Dawud, Alaka ibn Sahar at-Tamimi cured a madman by simply reciting Surah al-Fatiha. So the next time you walk past a pink-haired liberal on the streets of London, you know what to do, ladies and gentlemen. Test and see that Allah is indeed the greatest, and there is indeed no revelation greater than al-Fatiha. This surah is also the antidote to any form of poison. That's why it is called Ash-Shifa, the cure. It is also called al-Quran, the mother of the Quran, and al-Kitab, the mother of the book. It is one of the few revelations Allah only revealed to Muhammad. It wasn't revealed to Isa or Musa, only Muhammad. And it reads, in the name of Allah, the compassionate, the merciful, Praise be to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the compassionate, the merciful, master of the day of judgment. You do we worship, you do we ask for help. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those whom you have favored, not of those who have earned your anger or of those who have gone astray. I mean, what a beautiful prayer. Just reciting it makes me want to convert to the religion of peace. But a couple of things about this surah are worth mentioning. One, there are slight variations in its recitation amongst various Muslims. It all depends on what Quran you use. Newsflash, there are different Qurans with major and minor variations. Perfect preservation is a big fat lie. But that's another topic for another video. To get the full gist, I recommend this video by J. Smith. But concerning Surah al-Fatiha, author Jeffrey saw a version in Cairo where the second ayat differs from what's in the Hafs text. Instead of the compassionate, the merciful, this Cairo version says the sustainer, the merciful. Also, why the Hafs Quran says master of the day of judgment, the Wash Quran says king of the day of judgment. It is also a well-known fact that Muslims in North Africa recite al-Fatiha slightly differently from other Muslims around the world. Secondly, despite the innocent supplication of ayat 6 and 7 of Surah al-Fatiha, it is actually the first instance of hatred towards Jews and Christians in the Quran. Ayat 6 and 7 says, "Guide us to the straight path, the path of those whom you have favored, not of those who have earned your anger or of those who have gone astray." Islamic scholars identify those who have earned Allah's anger as the Jews and those who have gone astray as the Christians. For example, in his commentary on Ayat 7, Ibn Kathir states, "Those two paths are the paths of the Christians and the Jews, a fact that the believer should be aware of so that he avoids them. The Jews abandoned practicing the religion while the Christians lost their true knowledge. This is why anger descended upon the Jews, while being described as led astray is more appropriate for the Christians. Those who know but avoid implementing the truth deserve the anger, unlike those who are ignorant. The Christians want to seek true knowledge but are unable to find it because they did not seek it from its proper resources. This is why they were led astray." We should also mention that both the Christians and the Jews have earned the anger and are led astray, but the anger is one of the attributes more particular of the Jews. That's interesting. I guess Christians should consider themselves very, very lucky. Anyway, Tafsir al-Jalalain states, "The part of those whom you have favored with guidance is substituted by not the part of those against whom there is wrath, namely the Jews, nor of those who are astray, namely the Christians. The subtle meaning implied by this substitution is that the guided ones are neither the Jews nor the Christians." But it's not just commentaries and scholarly interpretations, which the BBC won't hesitate to call extreme. Even the Hadith support this interpretation. Sahih al-Bukhari states, narrated Abu Huraira, Allah's messenger said, "Say amen when the Imam says, not the part of those who earn your anger, such as the Jews, nor of those who go astray, such as the Christians. All the past sins of the people whose saying of Amin coincide with that of the angels will be forgiven." The fact that this is the standard popular interpretation of Ayat 7 of Surah al-Fatiha isn't up for debate. Some scholars disagree, but they don't represent the greater percentage of the Ummah. And isn't that wonderful? Muslims always accuse me of being obsessed with Islam and obsessed with Muslims, but they have been projecting. They are the ones obsessed with me. They are so obsessed with me that every day they mention me 17 times to their God. Let that sink in. That's how much Muslims are obsessed with you if you are a Jew or a Christian. Muslims are taught to recite 17 times every day that Christians and Jews have gone astray and deserve God's wrath. And it's all because we refuse to accept that a caravan robber, pedophile, and pathological liar is a prophet. But imagine what that does to the mind and soul of the average Muslim. The seed is sows in his spirit. No wonder the so-called Islamists have no qualms about bringing down the wrath of Allah on Jews and Christians. If the West really wants to combat hate speech, how about banning the recitation of Surah al-Fatiha? That's the vehicle for the transmission of Islamic hatred among Muslims, a reminder of who they should hate. After reciting this beautiful nonsense 17 times a day for 17 years, the desire to obey Surah 929 becomes strong. And we all know that the worthy executors of Allah's wrath on earth are his brainless slaves, whom the Quran has pumped with an air of superiority, though they have absolutely nothing to show for it.
And we're proud of that.